Jake Wallis Simons is with me now. He's an author and columnist and author of Israel-Phobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It. Jake, great to see you this evening. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, I'm well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. There's lots to talk about in regard to what's happening in the Middle East. We'll get to that in just a second, Jake. But what I'm interested in is these stories. There's been quite a few of them. There's one you tweeted about, which I saw this morning, in regard to a man arrested for shouting "God bless Israel" at a pro-Palestinian march. We've heard, of course, over the weekend about a Jewish protester charged over a placard mocking a leader of Hezbollah. I just wonder if you could just talk me through the first bit of that in regard to the man arrested for shouting "God bless Israel," because this is something that, in regard to many of the discussions about two-tier policing and how a lot of these protests are policed, that we do need to talk about. We've talked about it a lot on this programme, and indeed Peter Cardwell as well, who was on the pro-Palestinian side of one of those marches, actually, with a placard talking about one of the Palestinians who stood up to Hamas and was arrested for his efforts. Clearly the police are just not getting this right.
Yeah, this is the latest example of so-called two-tier policing, or at least apparently. We don't know all the details of this, we should add. But going from the footage that we've seen and the reports that seem to be around, this chap was shouting "God bless Israel," along with the slogan "Am Yisrael Chai," which is Hebrew, and it means the people of Israel live, or live on. And that slogan, by the way, derives from 1945 at the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, when the BBC recorded a Shabbat service for survivors who had just been liberated. And the Jewish British Army chaplain coined that phrase, "Am Yisrael Chai," in the smoking wreckage of World Jewry in 1945 and in Bergen-Belsen. So it's a very evocative and powerful slogan you'll hear people saying in Israel in response to the Hamas atrocities and so on. So he was saying that and was arrested for his troubles. It's the latest seeming example of two-tier policing by the police. We've seen them protecting marchers in Manchester with banners saying, you know, "Up the Intifada," just days after October the 7th. We've seen so many examples, them excusing away the use of calls for jihad on the streets of London. And another example, of course, the Telegraph reported on just the other day. A Jewish protester was apparently arrested for holding up a cartoon of the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, who was assassinated by Israel and not before time, just a few months ago. And in the footage from the interrogation of that protester, the police were apparently accusing him of offending pro-Hezbollah supporters. And the police didn't seem to be really aware that if there were any Hezbollah supporters there, they should be arresting them, because Hezbollah is a prescribed terrorist organisation.
Yeah, the police were worried and said in their questioning that they were worried people who were pro-Hezbollah would be offended. Well, if you're supporting a terrorist organisation, I couldn't care less if you're offended. In fact, I want to offend you if you're supporting terrorists.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there does seem to be a great moral and practical confusion in policing of these things. Some of the police just don't seem to know what they're doing, don't seem to know what Hezbollah is. We saw them the other day, you know, investigating that poor retired special constable for his tweet, going through his Brexity books as if they thought that was a book like
very Brexity things.
Extremism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't know what they're doing, some of them, and they also seem to be responding to a cultural instinct to hammer Jews, to hammer people who happen to be not towing the progressive line, and to go very, very softly on progressive radicals, on Islamic radicals, and so on. So this culture really seems to be to blame here.
Do you know who I feel really sorry for, Jake? I don't know if you saw that footage of the Liverpool protests, the Liverpool supporters, I should say, the Liverpool supporters being so happy, incredibly happy at their team's win in the Premier League. And then in the middle of this lovely celebration in Liverpool, a pro-Palestinian protester comes up and gets on a plinth and starts sort of brandishing his Palestinian flag. And one Liverpool supporter, having a bit of a laugh, pulls down his pants, and we see the pro-Palestinian protesters bare buttocks.
That's right. I mean, you know, you stand up against genocide, you're trying to do the right thing, and someone pulls your trousers down. It's not
our thoughts and prayers are with him. And in fact, I was so concerned that I shared the clip on social media so other people could be as concerned as I was. Just on a more serious note, speaking about the man arrested for shouting "God bless Israel," well, the Metropolitan Police say we're aware of a clip that has been shared on social media showing a 40-year-old man being arrested outside King's College on Friday. He was arrested on suspicion of criminal damage and a preventive breach of the peace. The criminal damage allegation relates to an incident not shown in the clip being shared. The man has been released on bail while our inquiries continue. We'll bring you any developments on that, of course. Jake, maybe we could turn to what's actually happening in the Middle East and Hamas agreeing to a US proposal on a Gaza ceasefire, but Israel rejecting that. Just talk us through that. Clearly, Israel's been very clear from day one: give back all the hostages, 58 of them still being held in Gaza. We don't know how many are alive and how many are not. And Hamas, be gone, go into exile at the very least. That's Israel's been consistent and clear on that, but there will be many people disappointed that the ceasefire offer anyway has been rejected by Israel.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion around at the moment. I mean, the reports that Hamas had accepted a proposal, Israel had rejected it, were then denied. And then about an hour ago, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, sent out a message saying that he was hoping for good news on a hostage swap and a ceasefire today or tomorrow. But then in the last sort of 10 minutes, his office has walked that back. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and the bits and bobs are leaking out to the public, but we don't really know until we know. I think the overall picture, of course, is that this is a strange negotiation because it's a zero-sum negotiation. Israel want to see Hamas gone. They won't stop until Hamas is gone. Hamas won't stop until Israel is gone. Of course, it won't ever be gone, but that's what they want. Israel wants all the hostages back, and Hamas knows that if it releases all the hostages, it will lose any last playing card it has to survive. And so it's not really a situation where you can compromise. Golda Meir, the famous Prime Minister of Israel in the 70s, famously said that, they want us dead, we intend to live. Between death and life, there isn't much where you can compromise. And that's really where Israel finds itself. So within all that, we're hoping to see some hostages back. It's notable that the leader of the organisation representing the families of the hostages said that the deal that Hamas was supposedly talking about was worth rejecting because it obviously didn't include anywhere near enough hostages to make it worthwhile. But I think the final observation I would make is that the Hamas are clearly rattled, they're suffering, they're under military pressure, and that is why they are at the negotiating table engaging in these talks. So all those people across the West who are jumping up and down saying to Israel, look, for God's sake, let Hamas survive, are basically condemning the hostages to a life of torture, imprisonment, and eventually death. If you want the hostages back, if you want Hamas to be defeated, there's no way to do it other than military action. And we need to just find a spine and get behind Israel and get behind our values that we share and stand against the forces of jihad.
And of course, there are an increasing number of anti-Hamas protesters over the last 4 or 5 days and previously in Gaza. They have been dealt with very, very brutally by Hamas, but there are so many more of them. Clearly, there are innocent people within Gaza who are standing up against Hamas terrorists. And in a shock move, a lot of the Western media ignoring that. We're not ignoring it, and I'm sure you're not either, Jake, in your reporting.
That's right. I mean, I've got a friend in Gaza. I talk about him a fair bit. I speak to him on the phone from time to time, and he rings me up or WhatsApps me fairly regularly saying, for God's sake, won't somebody cover these protests that he's taking part in? In fact, he himself is a little bit worried because he's had a couple of mild threats from Hamas after taking part in the protests himself. And he's trying to get me to help him to get out of Gaza, which I'm trying to do. But, he is saying, look, we're standing up against Hamas. We're doing our best. And we look at the footage coming out of Britain of people, going on pro-Palestine marches. What are they doing? He actually said to me, I'd like to see one of them come over here in Gaza and see how they fare, waiting for 3 hours to have a shower because you have to get the water and heat it up with the fire and all this sort of stuff. Then let's see how they... I think he actually said, how would they cope without gender-neutral toilets, actually?
I don't see Hamas bring those in anytime soon. Jake, thank you so much, as always. Jake Wallis Simons, their author and columnist, author of Israel-Phobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It.